Hello, listeners. This is Kat, and welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfic. This will be the continuation of Datastream. This will be Part 25, Chapter 25. Neglect, abuse, kidnapping, fraud, child endangerment. Kidnapping? Hitoshi interrupted Izuku. Yes. I don't care if he was legally transferred into their custody. They kept him in a closet and refused to let him out. They didn't even feed him. Izuku was practically spitting fire. He was so mad. They tried to kill him. I'm adding attempted murder to their charges. They're lucky. Izuku was interrupted by the door to the infirmary opening and Hitoshi walking in, being supported by Shouto and followed by Uncle. Hito! Izuku jumped from the bed he was laying in and ran to Hitoshi and clung to him, sobbing uncontrollably. I was so worried about you. I'm sorry it took me so long to find you. I swear I was looking the entire time. Izuku pulled his face away from Hitoshi's chest and grabbed his face in his hands and started kissing his face. I was terrified I was going to lose you when it started taking longer and longer to find you. Hitoshi's arms were weakly holding on to Izuku, even though that was as tight as he could. Come on, Zu. Let's get Shinzo into a bed so Chiyo-san can look him over, Uncle said, guiding the boys to the bed next to the one Izuku was in before. While Recovery Girl was scanning Hitoshi for injuries and cleaning the cuts on his face from the muzzle, Izuku never once let go of his hand, and Shouto on his other side did the same. They were not going to let him go. Okay, Recovery Girl said finally. You don't really have enough stamina right now for healing, so I'm going to have some food brought up for you, and then you are going to get some sleep. When you wake up, I'll heal you. Sound good? Hitoshi nodded. Izuku noticed that Hitoshi hadn't spoken a single word so far. Oh no. Please don't let the mutism have returned. He's been doing so well. Rubbing his hand, Izuku looked Hitoshi in the eyes. Hito, can you say something, please? It's okay if you can't, but I really want to hear your voice, he whispered. Hitoshi clenched his hand around Izuku's, and Izuku could see tears starting to form in Hitoshi's eyes. He took a few deep breaths and then, in the smallest whisper Izuku had ever heard from him, Hi. Izuku let his tears stream down his face as he smiled brightly at Hitoshi. Hi. He kissed the cuts on Hitoshi's face and then pressed his forehead against his. Whatever you need, you know I'm here for you. I'm gonna burn those fuckers who did this to you. I'll burn them literally, Shouto interrupted, holding Hitoshi's hand tightly. Right. Shouto would literally set them on fire while I legally set them on fire. They won't get away with what they did to you. No one hurts my moonlight and gets away with it, Izuku finished venomously. Hitoshi's eyes widened at that. Moonlight? He asked quietly. Izuku blushed and pulled a little bit away. Yeah, you're my moonlight, Hito. You're so bright, beautiful, almost ethereal, and you shine brightest in the dark. I love everything about you, he finished in a whisper. Hitoshi let loose a wet little laugh, and in a weak and cracking voice said, And here I thought I was being unique, thinking of you as my sunshine and Shouto as my starlight. Izuku giggled at Shouto's wide eyes. I've been thinking of Shouto as my starlight, too. Who would have guessed that all three of us would think the same thing? Shouto softly added. My sun and moon. Shouta had never actually left the room, so he made his presence known then. Will the three of you finally admit you're dating now? For fuck's sake, the only reason I'm not going to lock you in a room until you admit it out loud is because I'm not going to risk triggering any episodes. But no, that had been my plan last week. The three boys looked at each other and then nodded in unison. Hey, Uncle Shouta, I have 2 boyfriends now, Izuku giggled. Shouto nodded. Indeed. I wondered, do you think if my father found out, he'd have a heart attack? Hitoshi leaned his head against Shouto's shoulder. Want to write him and find out? For science, Izuku exclaimed. After Hitoshi had eaten and the three of them had scooted Izuku's bed over to Hito's to make one big bed for the three of them to pile on, Hitoshi asked, Izu, why were you already here? Did you sprain your wrist again or something? Or something, yeah. Quirk exhaustion. Izuku was playing with Hitoshi's hand, tracing the calluses gently. I learned how to do something cool with my quirk, and each time I tried it out, it knocked me on my ass for like 10 hours. What did you do? Hitoshi nudged his knee with his own. Well, Izuku hesitated, glancing up at Hitoshi through his bangs. Want me to start it off? Shouto suggested. I clearly can't explain everything. I didn't really understand it at all, but I can start it. When Izuku nodded, Shouto continued. We were worried when you never replied to any of our texts or memes on Monday. Izuku tried calling you when he noticed you hadn't left your house, but that was sent to voicemail. Shouto's face darkened. We both knew you'd never send Izuku to voicemail. Hitoshi nodded at that. In all the years he'd known Izu, he'd never sent him to voicemail. At first, Even when he didn't want to talk, he'd been too afraid of losing his only friend to dare ignore a call. And then when he was having nonverbal days, he'd answer before immediately hanging up and sending a text. Now, he loved hearing Izu's voice so much that he'd rather take a kick to the face than ignore a call from Izu. Zuko had Aizawa call your fosters, and they said you no longer live there, so Zuko spent the rest of the week looking for you. He found you this morning. I guess that's where my explanation comes in, huh? Izu nervously tugged on one of Hitoshi's fingers. Well, like Sho said, I tried to track you down. First, I looked for your social worker, Tachibana Rie. I remembered you said you liked her, so I was curious why she had chosen to move you, but I was both relieved and annoyed to find she was on vacation in England and had no part in this, so that was a dead end. Izuku continued. Next, I knew you had arrived at home at about 3 in the afternoon on Sunday, so I just had to look at the signals of who else was there from that time onwards. There were 4 people, but only one who had any connection to the child social services. Izu turned fully towards Hitoshi and just hugged him, laying his head under his chin. Long story short, I figured out how to identify, isolate, and track brain waves. Hitoshi choked on air at that and just gaped at the head of hair under his chin. Izu, you're going to need to make that short story a bit longer, because what the actual fuck? Shouto snorted. I think I had to restart my brain when he told me. Okay, well, remember when Uncle was in the hospital and no one knew if he was going to wake up? When Hitoshi nodded, Izuku continued. Well, I think I subconsciously tapped into his brainwaves and made him wake up. I'm not sure how, but I think I did. Anyways, back to when I was looking for you. I had been searching for you for a full day. I was ignoring Uncle and Papa telling me to take breaks. I was getting desperate. Uncle finally erased my quirk on the second day. I think I was on hour 36 of no sleep. This was the first time he'd ever erased my quirk, and he had given me plenty of warning that he was going to do it. Izuku shrugged. The experience was different. He stopped for a little, long enough for Hitoshi to think he needed some prodding, so he ran his fingers through Izu's hair. Then what? Uncle's quirk doesn't affect mutations, Izuku said simply. Datastream is a mutation, but I saw it. I saw the way Uncle's quirk tried to affect me. I saw his quirk. I saw how his quirk was an extension of his brainwaves, how the brainwaves were electrical signals. He paused again. Erasure didn't affect me, but it did show me a new aspect of Datastream. Izuku sighed deeply and snuggled closer to Hitoshi. It took a few more days of scanning brainwaves before I found you. I would much rather view every single camera in Japan for 10 hours straight than scan brainwaves for 5 minutes. The quirk exhaustion would be less, but I'd do it again in a heartbeat if it meant I could save you, Moonlight. Every time he did that, he would be unconscious for about 8 hours, and he never gave himself time to recover from the migraine before he jumped right back in, Shouto added softly. Izu, Hitoshi whispered. Do you have a migraine right now? Izuku nodded and mumbled something that sounded like, but you're worth it, and Hitoshi ran his fingers through his hair again. Can I put you to sleep, Sunshine? You deserve a good rest, and I think I'm about to pass out myself. Okay, he muttered, and Hitoshi grabbed his mind. Sleep, Sunshine. Hitoshi kissed the top of his head. How about you, Starlight? Shouto leaned over and kissed Hitoshi's cheek before laying his head on Hitoshi's shoulder, kissing Izu's green curls. Please. Go to sleep. After Shouto fell asleep, Hitoshi looked between his 2 boyfriends, and then let himself fall asleep, a soft smile on his face. Yeah, home is right here, with his sun and stars. I won't allow anything like this to happen again, Nezu said to the gathered teachers in the staff room. While Shinzo Hitoshi is the only student in the heroics course in foster care, he is not the only student in foster care at this school. Therefore, to ensure an incident like this does not occur again, I will be implementing a dorm system, and all foster children will be offered the chance to become a ward of UA if they are unhappy with their current placement. After a moment's thought, he added, as will any student who may be in an unsafe home environment. The students will be moving in after their final exams. They can move their things in any time during the summer break. Every one of the teachers nodded their assent. Good, Nezu chirped. Ishiyama-kun, I hope you will be willing to assist in the construction of the new dorms. Cementos nodded in agreement. Excellent. That was everything I needed to discuss. Dismissed. As the teachers left the conference room, Nezu noticed that Yagi was still sitting in his seat, clearly wanting to speak with Nezu privately. Once the room was clear, Nezu addressed Yagi. Something on your mind? Yes, actually. As I'm sure you're aware, I have chosen a successor for One for All. Togeda Mirio, Yagi started, but was interrupted. Yes, Chiyo-san has informed me of how many times the boy has come to her with shattered bones. I was wondering, Yagi-san, when you were going to reach out for some assistance from a competent teacher. Yagi narrowed his eyes at Nezu for a moment before relaxing again and ignoring the pointed jab. Well, I'm reaching out now, Nezu-san. While I may have benefited from informing someone earlier, both Mirai and myself were confident we could train young Togeda. After all, Mirai was able to train him on how to use his own quirk effortlessly. Nezu stared at Yagi for a few moments, not letting any of the shock he was feeling show. Nezu had spent every Saturday for 4 months in 3-hour-long one-on-one sessions with Togeda Mirio to help him completely understand how to make the most of permeation. Was Sir Night-Eye attempting to take credit for this? Yagi-san, may I ask why you were coming to me for this? Surely you know of another quirk counselor who could assist. Well, young Togeda mentioned that you had given him some advice on his original quirk, so I figured you could help with one for all, especially since you already know about the quirk. Nezu hummed. On the one hand, he most certainly could assist Togeda-kun. Clearly, the quirk did not manifest the same for him as it did for All Might, so a different approach would be needed. It would be a puzzle that Nezu would be able to play with and figure out. Oh, but on the other hand, how much fun would it be to force Yagi to play nice with Izuku? Nezu wasn't as young as he used to be, and that pup would be taking over for Nezu sooner or later. He can start taking some of Nezu's duties now. While Izuku didn't have his certification for quirk counseling just yet, that was only because he needed to be 16 before he could legally take the examination. It was already scheduled for July 17th, 2 days after his pup turned 16. This could simply be part of his duties as Nezu's personal student. Izuku will be taking over Nezu's quirk counseling duties, and Nezu will only step in if Izuku truly needs the assistance. With that thought in mind, Nezu grinned. Of course, Yagi-san. I will be glad to offer the services of my personal student to assist Togeda-kun to master his new quirk. You will, however, need to explain the details of One for All to my student if you wish to have him be truly effective. No, Yagi refused. I am asking for you to assist, and only because you are already aware of the origins of my quirk. Well, therein lies a problem, Nezu hummed in disappointment. I will not be assisting directly. If my student feels he is in need of guidance, then I may step in a little for him, but he will be taking over all of my quirk counseling appointments in the near future, starting with this one. With one of his trademark grins, Nezu tacked on. You either get his assistance, or find another counselor. Yagi glared at Nezu for a few more moments before finally sighing. Very well. Which of your students will you be assigning to young Togeda? Will it be young Yamada or young Aizawa? Oh, this would be fun. Yagi thought Nezu was talking about either Hitoshi or Shouta, which, while they were both also his personal students, they had never been in the running for Nezu's successor. Why, Aizawa-kun, of course, Nezu exclaimed, knowing full well that Yagi was going to be expecting a different Aizawa. All right, listeners, this concludes Chapter 25 of Datastream. Chapter 26 will be up next. I love this chapter personally because I think it's great how vindictive Nezu is by throwing Yagi to Izuku and not giving him all the details. I think that's great. I also really like that this chapter finally gets us to the point where the three boys are finally in a relationship and they finally confessed. So there's that. I hope you all are still enjoying this fic, though. I am eager to hear your overall reactions to everything so far. And as always, thank you so much for listening.